I'm back. And the Federal Executive Council on Wednesday approved the award of a contract to Dangote Industries for the construction of 5 roads totaling 274.9 kilometers at the cost of 309.9 billion naira to be advanced to the company as tax credits. And this comes under the Road Infrastructure Development and Refurbishment Investment Tax Credit Scheme. For a better understanding of this, its prospects and challenges, we're joined by partner, Tax Regulatory and People Services at KPMG Nigeria. That's Jibola Olomola. Great to have you on the program.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, in a nutshell, what is this Road Infrastructure Development and Refurbishment Investment Tax Credit Scheme all about?
Well, the scheme is you can describe it as an instance of public-private partnership between the federal government of Nigeria and the private sector of Nigeria, by which the government leverages the economies of scale, efficiencies, and contracting protocols of the private sector in developing critical infrastructure projects across the Federation. In the instance of EO number 7 of 2019, road infrastructure. But like the minister also said on Wednesday, the objective of the government is to use this scheme as a model for delivering infrastructure across several touch points beyond roads. But the scheme is primarily concerned at this time with road infrastructure.
Now, we understand that certain specific investors have been granted approval to develop road project under the scheme. Now, is the scheme open or close-ended? And what are the eligibility criteria for participation in this scheme?
Well, the scheme has been designed to be open-ended in the sense that it is not limited to a number of companies only. And so if you look at the list that the Honorable Minister for Works and Housing, Babatunde Raji-Fashola, SAN, read out during his press briefing, there were quite a number of private companies that were included on his list. Some of them were publicly listed companies traded on the stock exchange. Some of them were companies in the oil and gas industry. Some operate in consumer markets. And there were at least one bank that was listed in the scheme as well. That tells you that the scheme is open to participation to companies across different sectors of the economy. And quite a number of companies have indicated interest in participating in the scheme. Obviously, to build a road project is a very expensive proposition. The average cost to build a kilometer of roads in Nigeria is about 1 billion naira. So what that then means is that the kind of company that can participate in a scheme of this nature has got to be a company with a very big balance sheet, so that you can actually have the financial wherewithal to undertake the civil engineering work that is required by the scheme.
All right, another issue
so
now.
The only limiting factor really is your ability to finance the road.
Okay. Another issue now is how are these roads selected, and can an investor execute any road project in Nigeria?
That's a very, very good question. And from what we have seen, there are 2 categories of roads that are being built under this scheme. The first category is what has been determined by the government itself to be priority sector roads. So if you look at the executive order, the president has already listed some roads that the government considers to be priority roads. And they are inviting the private sector to adopt all or any of these roads. The second category of roads will be roads that the private sector participant itself considers to be of economic interest. In other words, a road that can be demonstrated to be able to unlock significant economic capital for Nigeria if it was to be refurbished. If a participant were to come up with such a road as one that it wants to adopt, then they've got to make an application to the management committee of the scheme for approval of that road, and then the president will approve the road if it fits the investment criteria that the government has stipulated. Once the minister and the president are aligned as to the adoption of these roads, then the president will approve the roads, and just like the minister announced on Wednesday, the roads will then be included in the scheme. So that's the way it goes. It could be a road that's been pre-listed by the government, or a road that a participant brings forward as one of the roads that he would like to refurbish.
Now, in your opinion, what is the expected benefit of the scheme to the government and, of course, the economy in general?
That's also a very good question. And the benefit really is in terms of infrastructure availability. Like you know, investors have choice in where to move their capital to. And one of the things that affects investor decision is your ability to leverage your supply chain. So if you have goods, for example, that are stuck at the ports, and you cannot mobilize and move those goods across the country to the destination point, then obviously there will be gridlock at the ports. So taking the Apapa to Uronshoki Road, for example, repairing that road creates a throughput for movement of goods across that corridor. And so in terms of the economic benefits is one, movement of goods and services across the country. Secondly, direct and indirect job creation. And as you can imagine, once you create jobs by employing people to work on road projects, factories can also open to maximum capacity, which means more employment. And the more there is employment, then there is also indirect benefits to provisions of service providers that are attracted to those centers of economic activity. I'll give you a good illustration. If you're going to build a 1 kilometer road, the people who are working on those projects are going to have to eat at the very basic level, which means that there will be activities of food vendors. They're going to have to live somewhere during the construction period. That means that rental properties will also be motivated. Their children will go to schools. They will be able to pay school fees, which means that educational sector also gets impacted. And you can model the impact of this economic activity across so many touch points of direct and indirect benefits that you then see that the economy itself is the beneficiary of the multiplier factors that this activity can generate.
So basically it's a ripple effect. But what are the likely benefits of the scheme to the participants? And, you know, how are these participants going to recover their costs? And I also want to know the risk here.
Right. So for most of the participants that have been identified from what the government has announced and what the Honorable Minister also announced on Wednesday, a number of the participants are companies, manufacturing companies. For the manufacturing companies, they have a direct benefit in the sense that they are better able to maximize the production capacity of their factories and manufacturing outlets that are situated around that corridor. So, for example, you can move your goods better. For the other group of companies that are not manufacturing companies, some of them will view this as their contribution to the robust development of Nigeria. So for a bank, for example, a bank is agnostic as to where the situation of the road might be. You may find that the bank is then stimulating economic activities in a particular state in the sense of also mobilizing capital and encouraging the activities that could indirectly lead to an increase in banking deposits and banking activity. So for some participants, there will be a direct benefit in terms of optimizing their own production operations. And for other participants, the benefit is a bit more indirect in the sense that they don't have a direct benefit for the activity that they are undertaking. In terms of the risk to the participant, the risk really is in terms of getting their money back. Because ultimately, everybody is, if you're financing the building of a road, which is really the responsibility of the government of the Federation, what you are then doing is that you are lending to the country. And ultimately, the risk is how long will it take for you to recover your money? Will you recover it over 3 years, 4 years, 10 years? And that's the only risk that these companies face, really.
Now, it has been noted by several observers that the scheme is a reinvention of a tax deduction scheme previously available for road and other infrastructure projects under the Companies Income Tax Act. Can you please provide some insight into the key differences between this revised tax credit scheme and the tax deduction scheme under the previous administration?
That's a very good question, and it allows me to also clearly demonstrate the difference. So in the old scheme, what you could get was a deduction. You were allowed to recover your investment through an accelerated and updated capital allowance process. So you could get a deduction against your ultimate tax liability. If you then walk through the valuation of what a participant gets, what you get is, because it's a tax offset, you are only able to recover a maximum of 30% of your spend. So let me illustrate this very simply for you. If you spend ₦1 billion on 1 kilometer of roads, you are then able to charge that ₦1 billion to your tax computation as a shield against your ultimate tax liability. And because the tax rate is at 30%, you are technically only able to recover 30% of your investment. That is the reason why that scheme was not very successful, and you did not have any private sector organization that sought to benefit under that scheme, because it does not make commercial sense for you to spend ₦1 billion and recover only 300 million naira. The current scheme has learned from the lessons of the previous scheme, and it allows participants to recover 100% of their project costs. So if you have spent ₦1 billion building a road, you are able to recover ₦1 billion. And because you have also suffered accretion of the opportunity cost of having your money available for your business for a period of time, there's also a one-time uplift, which is currently measured at the monetary policy rate plus 2% as a one-time benefit to participants under the scheme. What that then means is when you compare the two schemes, under the old moribund scheme, you only get 30% of your money back. Under the new scheme, you get 100% of your money back. And you can see the difference in the adoption rate. Under the old scheme, almost nobody was interested in the scheme. Under the new scheme, several companies have indicated interest in participating and partnering with the government to move the needle on Nigeria's infrastructure development journey. So you can see that the success of the new scheme is determined by the ability of the private sector participants to recover the cost of their investment.
Exactly. Profit is important there. But it was indicated in the order that the scheme is expected to last a period of 10 years. Are there grandfathering provisions for road projects that extend beyond the 10-year period?
Well, because the tax credits themselves will be available until utilized. So if you have accumulated tax credits during the lifespan of the scheme, those credits will be available to you until they are fully utilized, even if they're utilized after the scheme. But the question of 10 years is in terms of identification and adoption of roads to be constructed under the scheme. So once the scheme expires after 10 years, if it is not renewed by the government, then no further roads can be developed under the scheme after that period. But for roads already done, the scheme, the executive order itself includes grandfathering provisions that allow you to recover the investments that you have made that have been recognized by the government. As of that date, you can continue to recover them even after the scheme has expired, but you will not be able to add new roads after that date.
Yeah. All right.
Our hope is that when the government looks at the way the scheme has worked, if the government feels that it has been a success story, the government may, one, extend the lifespan of the scheme beyond 10 years, or the government may, two, expand the coverage of the scheme beyond roads into other critical infrastructure that the government might want to leverage private sector capital to undertake.
All right, Ajibola, a quick one before we let you go. How are we sure that the value of the tax credit is not in excess of the project value? Where is the assurance that this cannot be abused in terms of the valuation and the tax credit?
That's an extremely important question, and I'm glad you raised it. Of course, we know that there's a tendency to inflate contracts in the public sector, and the government has already taken very robust steps in ensuring the valuation of contracts in the public sector. So you have organizations like the Bureau for Public Procurement that currently values every single contract before it is awarded by the federal government of Nigeria. Now, those protocols that apply to public sector procurement also apply to procurement under this scheme. So when a private participant comes up with its costing of a road infrastructure project, they have got to submit that costing, their bill of quantities, everything about the road they want to construct, the design, everything will have to be approved by the Ministry for Works and Housing and also by the Bureau for Public Procurement, who will look at all the issues around their costing. In addition, the Minister for Finance, who is the chairman of the management committee of the scheme, they also look at all these protocols and ensure that due process has been followed. And if you look at the constituents of the management committee, it includes the ICRC, which is Infrastructure Route Concession Regulatory Unit for concessions. It includes the BPP. It includes the DMO. So you find that all these agencies work in concert to ensure that due process has been followed, valuation is done properly, and there's a phrase in the executive order that says that the costing must be what is reasonable, exclusively and necessarily incurred for the purpose of that road project. All that is to ensure that the cost of the project is efficient. And a simple comparison would help you see, if you look at the cost, the average cost of a kilometer of roads under this scheme and the average cost of a kilometer of roads outside of the scheme, you will see that significant cost efficiencies are being leveraged by virtue of this scheme. And credit goes to the Minister for Finance, the Minister for Works and Housing, and the President of the Federation for enunciating such a scheme and bringing some of the benefits that have been harnessed over the last few years for the benefit of all Nigerians.
All right, let's hope all parties reap benefits from this scheme. I will have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time on Business Morning. Mr. Ajibola Olomola is the partner, tax regulatory and people services, KPMG. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.